I see a name on there that I haven't seen in a while. I don't know if they're still up or what exactly is going on. We'll try ringing through to them. We've got missions that must be completed today. Let's see here. And of course, we're in the Lug star system at the moment. And of course, the party that I wanted to talk to is now gone for the day. Thank you, XSplit. Thank you, software vendors, for making more buggy software that doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Unbelievable. And why am I wanted in this star system? It's not really clear. It just says that I am. It's the Crimson State Group. Again, no reason given. Anaconda for sale in the system, and a Type 7. No Type 10. And no passenger cabins to speak of. Alright. Course has been laid in for our target system en route. No, let's not do that. Let's see what services are available at Planet 7. We need a black market. Don't see that there. And actually now we're going to go to the galaxy map and we will look up enabled black markets. What do we got here? Nothing on a projected path.
Departure authorized.
Frameshift drive charging.
All clear. Have a safe trip, Commander.
Frameshift drive charging.
Reducing 3 jumps to 1.
Delacey, Tango, Romeo's India. You are now in Federation space. Follow all regulations before and after landing. Okay, Commander. Proceed to landing pad 05. Automated docking confirmed.
Scan detected.
Your approach is good, Commander. Perform landing checklist.
Landing gear deployed.
Landing sequence completed. Disembark when ready.
Pilots, do not block the access corridor at any time.
That's interesting. I was formerly an ally of the Federation. Now I'm only friendly. Probably something to do with one of those failed missions from yesterday. Thank you very much, Facebook. And to Oculus, their subsidiary that botched everything. Ay. Material traders.
The access corridor is designated the no-stop zone. Blockages will be removed using lethal force.
Yes.
Unsanctioned acts of aggression will not be tolerated. Obey station law and enjoy your stay. Loitering is a crime punishable by death. Make sure you have authorization before you enter the docking bay. This station operates under a docking reservation policy. Ensure you have authorization before attempting to disembark. For your convenience and safety, pacification emplacements are active and tracking at this station. This station operates under a docking reservation policy. Ensure you have authorization before attempting to disembark. Mind your speed and your surroundings. Avoid collisions at all costs.
Pad detached complete. Depart when ready, Commander.
Fly smart. Fly safe. Use your speed inside your line.
Reports of heavy traffic within the area. Maintain safe clearance distance. All clear.
Scan detected. Under attack. Flight assist off. Impulse attack. Trajectory disruption. Flight assist on. Target shields offline. Under attack. Target destroyed. Target destroyed. Scan detected. Scan detected. Scan detected. Under attack. Target shields offline. Target destroyed. Scan detected. Scan detected. Programming linked drone. Programming linked drone. Programming linked drone. Under attack. Cargo scoop deployed. destroyed. Scan detected. Scan detected. Scan detected. Scan detected. Under attack. Target shields offline. Scan detected. Target destroyed. Collector liquid expired. Target shields offline. Target destroyed. Under attack. Target shields offline. Target destroyed. Programming limpet drone. Programming limpet drone. Programming limpet drone. Scan detected. Incoming mission critical message. Under attack. Bounty incurred. Collector limpet expired. Target shields offline. Thermal attack. Gaining lead. Scan detected. Cargo scope retracted. Shields offline. Taking damage. Warning. Hull breach attack. Taking internal damage. Friendship drive charging. Incoming mission critical message. Incoming mission critical message. Flight assist off. Hull integrity critical. Under attack. Incoming mission critical message. Eject. 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 Eject.
Well, that's unfortunate. I lost 1,000,000 credits plus the value of my current Python. So, what this new feature, detention feature, is about, I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know what that means. We're in an unexplored system. We still have 2 missions left, one of which was destroyed. It looks as if... Yeah. Well, I fired at a non-wanted craft was the problem. I wasn't sure if I could get away with it because the security service is already shooting at them. But,
Departure authorized.
of course, the moment that happened,
Landing gear retracted.
that was it. However, this does free me up to complete these other missions, which we will now attempt to do. We must travel to the Lumen 16 system. And I think we're in SPFLF1, which is a detention facility. We are very near Sirius. Someone's in the solar system. Delta Flyer. Well, okay.
Caller disconnected.
Hello? Hello? Oh, okay. You accepted my voice comms. Says, can you hear me okay? this incident because I apparently fired on someone who wasn't wanted. I didn't look carefully, and that's what I only hit them once, and that resulted in there being 20 Vipers right on top of me. And I couldn't outrun them. I almost did, but I couldn't quite outrun them. Then they started, as soon as they ripped my shields down, in came the missiles. They took out my short-range anti-missile point defense weapon. And yeah, so I'm at 87% friendly with the Federation right now. I was allied with them until some other incident last night caused me to... And I still have enough to rebuy the Python again, because I had 20 million, so it cost me 9 million to replace this one out of insurance. Anyway, well, no, I'm going to let you go, but we'll talk again soon. It was great talking to you again, and thanks again for the info that you did provide.
Frameshift drive charging. 4, 3, 2, 1. Frameshift drive charging. Four, three, two. Flight assist. Landing gear deployed.
Low gravity warning. Cargo scoop deployed. Cargo port at maximum capacity.
What? Why are they putting hostages in canisters?
Cargo hold at maximum capacity. Incoming mission critical message.
But I don't understand why you would put hostages into canisters. It does not make any sense. Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think so. I've just got a wing communication. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, so are you a VR user?
No, I'm not actually.
I can't find anyone who's logged in. I usually only add VR users as friends, but I guess I must have, like, partnered with you on your mic. But anyway, yeah, apparently Facebook and Oculus botched the driver update yesterday to the Oculus headset, which locked me out of the game and cost me a bunch of missions. I'm trying to find out if Frontier is going to award those of us who are whiny and bitchy if we're going to get any kind of compensation for losing our missions and all the other crap. I actually lost a ship tonight on top of it, in part because of what happened yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I was mining. It was indirect. I was mining inside. I was like going after ships in a mining zone, and I have a cannon. Well, it's one of two things. I have a cannon that detonates bomblets at range. And either I hit one of the police ships that was running around helping defend me, or I shot at another vessel that I saw a police ship firing at that didn't have the wanted sign on it. So why the two ships were fighting, I don't know, but my efforts to help out the police ship by attacking that other ship was rewarded with a whole fleet of police ships turning their weapons on me, and I couldn't get away fast enough, despite having just upgraded my Python to like 630 shields. And, I hung in battle there pretty good for a while, but once my shields were gone, they just disabled all my systems and then blew my ship out from underneath me, so a typical police ship tactic. But
Oh my gosh. So you lost VR capability while you were playing in game?
Well, I lost one mission that I was carrying a passenger for 1 million credits from LHS 380. And returning her back to her. So she ejected before I did. Because she was detected. And then after all that happened, my ship gets blown up, and then they recover my cargo canister and take me to a detention area. And I'm revived in the detention area, and I don't know what that does, because it didn't seem to cost me any money or anything. Maybe an extra 280 credits or something, I don't know. But some minimal amount. If I pay my fee, and then I'm released back to the starport, which is, this detention area is actually a spaceship with fighter bays on it in orbit of a nondescript planet, an ice world somewhere. It's in the core world systems. It's near Earth, which is where I'm at right now. LHS 380 is only 13 light years away from Earth. So I'm pretty close. I'm pretty close to Sol, but I'm making a lot of money off passengers right now. And I think it's because they shut down those other two ways of making money. They killed off mining is apparently turned off right now.
Yeah.
Because someone found
I heard about that.
they found a way to like mine something, then they put it. I can't remember if they put the materials in their refinery and didn't process it, and then went back again, got more minerals, and just kept going back, and basically creating a situation where they had an exponentially ever increasing amount of money.
Yeah, Obsidian Am, I know, put out a video about it. It was basically, I think he gave the example of osmium, and if you bring in, like, you said, like 10 tons of osmium,
yeah.
One of the mission rewards you could choose from was to get 30 tons of osmium.
Oh yes, so
Yeah,
then you just get an endless circle of osmium that would just ever increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't very well thought out. Oh well.
No, it wasn't.
And then there was another game error, but it's being disputed amongst designers and players, like whether or not it's really a game error. It's a way to make money, and you can make a lot of money quickly, but it's part of the design of the game, and they're just trying to decide if they want to keep the feature in there. I don't know, like, I'd like to have a bit more versatility to choose craft, and I don't like grinding forever. Already, the players who started this game really, really early got huge bonuses and advantages in terms of being able to earn. That's why you see all these players running around in Anacondas that don't have very much combat skill. They're like rated novice, but they're in an Anaconda. It's like, how the hell
Yeah,
did
I
you...
think I noticed something like that.
Like, how the hell do you get that? You know, like, I'm already competent, and I'm in a Python, and I'm going to be, like, you know, headed for Master right away. So, and that's, you know, losing the occasional battle, which I can never seem to get above 20 million credits lately. I've just been hovering for the last month around 20 million. I need 50...
But you lost a few Pythons along the way, too, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, I lose 10 million every time. I mean, one a week, right? It seems like it's about one Python every week I lose, and then, and then you're just jacked. Like, and if I somehow get to 50 million, like I'm just on the verge of spending, you know, the last upgrade for my ship, and all of a sudden, bang, 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 3 Pythons get nailed, and I'm back down to 20 million again. Like, it doesn't make any bloody sense. So, I'm not very happy with that, but... And it's always some weird quirky, like, oh, and someone passed in front of you and took friendly fire, and, you know, and I'm having to, like, be extra careful, like, that this doesn't happen. It's like, you know, like, fuck off. Like, you can't just have a bunch of police ships come along and attack you because, you know, they are allowed to shoot you as many times as they want. But you attack them and the whole fleet is in the system is suddenly after you. And you stand no chance. No chance.
Yeah, it's pretty harsh.
And it's like, you know, it's not like there aren't other pirates in the asteroid belt, but they suddenly drop what they're doing and attack you. It's like, oh, we're engaged in battles with like at least two other wings of pirates, but this one Python has decided to take a pot shot at us. Well, we better finish him off right now.
But, you know, it's funny. It reminds me of a similar problem in Elder Scrolls Skyrim.
Yeah.
You ever played that game?
No.
Like, you could be fighting a dragon with some guards, and if you accidentally hit one of the guards, no, forget the dragon. They're going to come after you now.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Like, they should go after the point of the largest threat. Once you've dealt with the largest threat, you know, you can take out the smaller ones.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Anyway, the largest threat is good. The largest threat is going to dole out the most amount of damage. You want it at least hobbled or like neutralized so that you can deal before you deal with any of the other threats. And they're not doing that at all. They're like, you know, oh, we're already engaged in battle, and you know, oh my God, a Python shot like a beam laser at us and hit us for like, you know, there was like three damage to a shield arc. Oh well, we better finish him off. That's it. Declare war on his entire superpower. Anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
I'll just have to like watch it. I don't know when I'm going to get to 50 million. At this rate, it'll be never, because it's always going back to like 10 million again, which is where I'm at yet again. But if they keep these passenger missions together, and if Oculus can keep its act together long enough to like allow. The other thing Oculus is doing I don't like, and a lot of hardware vendors have fallen into this trap, is they're taking advantage of the cloud. Yes, that's great and wonderful, but they're updating all the time. Like every little bug fix has to be updated, and it's updating and updating and updating. I've actually had to shut off the updates to my graphics card, because it was like once every 3 or 4 days there was like some new NVIDIA release would come out, and sure enough, in the middle of a game, I'd suddenly start experiencing lag, and I'd be like, well, why is this happening?
Oh my gosh.
And you find out, oh, well, they've decided, you know, in the middle of your business day to update the whole thing.
Yeah, that sounds pretty aggravating. I don't know.
You don't have these problems yourself, I guess. It must be just me.
Well, you know, I don't have VR.
What's that?
Can't. I said I don't have VR, so I don't even know. But yeah, I did hear about that issue though online. I saw an article about it, and I was like, oh man, I wonder how Commander Trium's doing with this. I wonder if he is on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I got up that morning, and, you know, my first coffee break, I work from home right now. My first coffee break, I decided, okay, let's go have a look at the Elite, you know, update has probably happened by now. We're plus 7 a.m. now in GMT.
Mm-hmm.
What? It won't load? What happened? You know, I know, and it's one of these situations where you know you didn't reconfigure anything on your computer. You didn't even reboot it from last night. It's still running with the same memory. So I figured, something's gone corrupt in the memory. Well, we just better reboot again and make sure. Reboot. Now the headset, instead of just displaying, you know, an error message, the headset is dark, and on the screen, it's not even displaying headset options anymore. So you can't even load. So you're just dead in the water. Now it doesn't work at all. And the error messages that you got from Oculus, originally they were saying, oh, there's nothing wrong. And it was just stupid. Like, yeah, there's something wrong here. And they have no 1-800 number. That drove me nuts. Like, the fact that I couldn't call tech support. That you have to email tech support, and they respond with an automated email message back to you that says, yeah, we'll get back to you in 1 to 2 days with a response to your problem.
Good gracious.
I'm sorry, but 48 hours on something I spent, an $800 appendage to my computer, is not acceptable. Now, they've reduced that to $360 or something Canadian as of this month, I think, now. It's the final, like, this version of the Oculus, it's at its end of its life cycle, so they're getting ready, obviously, to release a new product of some sort. But probably one with, you know, a few more features, like wider angle of view, so you can see more like the human eye. You'll be able to see around a little bit behind you, and towards the either side of your perception goes. Right now, like the Oculus I'm using right now, you get a kind of a little bit of tunnel vision. It's not really like looking into a kaleidoscope, but it's as if you're looking into a telescope a little bit, or a set of binoculars, where at the extreme reaches of your right and left field of view, you get, you know, the edges of the binoculars. You can't look in those directions. Well, if they went with more of a Microsoft HoloLens type design, you would be able to see all the way to the edge of your field of view. which would be nice, but it would also require amendments to the graphics and a few other things. But the only other way to configure Elite to work with full field of view is to get 3 monitors and configure the game to work with all 3. I couldn't even get the stupid thing to work with 2 monitors, much less 3, on my system. But I wasn't tinkering with it that much. I wanted the game because I wanted to play with VR.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. It does look pretty cool in VR.
Yeah, well, it's probably the best VR game that currently exists, so...
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, of all the VR games I thought about playing, like, Elite Dangerous makes the most sense.
Yeah, especially the amount of time that I sink into this thing. Like, for the amount of time I've put into it, I think I'm at 7+ weeks now of, like, just solid gameplay over the last 2 years. Like, that's a lot of time. That's like a month and a... That's nearly 2 full months of time in the last 2 years. So virtually almost all of my spare time that I wasn't out with friends or doing something, you know, sociable, just sitting at home by myself, I don't do that. Like, I have to be doing something. So, I don't know, it's probably worth it. Like, $800 really didn't seem like that much of an expense when you look at how much time I'm sinking into playing with that $800. Like, how else am I going to use $800 more efficiently? Probably not. Probably wouldn't happen. So, anyway.
Yeah.
Like, think about the things you spend $800 on. Like, you spent way more than that on your cell phone last year. Even if you're in the United States, you spent more than that.
Depending. Actually, I went middle of the road. I basically found a phone that was better than what I had, but not too expensive. And it turned out to be a Sony Xperia for like $350.
Okay.
Yeah, I just went with one that didn't have, a provider built in, an unlocked phone. But, otherwise, if you get like a Samsung phone, you are going to, or even an iPhone, you're going to be spending close to the same amount as like buying a,
well, you got to think about how much money. Yeah, but you got to think about how much money you're spending just on the bandwidth, on the service fees, right? Like, if you buy a burner, you're going to spend a certain amount of money talking to people on the burner, and you'll pay as you go. If you get
That's not a burner phone, though.
If you get a plan, they assign you a phone, in which case now you have this phone with certain guarantees associated with it. And you pay a fee every month. And you're contracted to be with them. In Canada, they can't contract you. It's against the law now for them to book you into contracts lasting any longer than 2 years. So it used to be that they could lock you in for 3 years. Some even tried 5. And the government came along and said, there's fewer companies in Canada, so the government has to step in to regulate the market a little bit. If it doesn't, it just turns into a collusion and monopoly extravaganza. So
yeah, sounds about right.
So because these are big companies, some of them are owned by American corporations, and they get stupid. So they gouge you. And I'm just taking off here, away from this planet that I'm on.
No worries.
And so they decided but I mean, even so, you're spending, when you look at 2 years, and that's about how long I've had the headset now. In that time, I've still only spent $800. It's one flat fee, so $400 a year. I'm spending way, way more than that on phone, and certainly way more than that on internet. I mean, if you average it out over 12 months, I pay for unlimited internet. It's $80 Canadian times 12. So even on the internet fees, which are probably fairly cheap, Canada's really, one of the better wired countries in the world. I've seen countries that have cheaper rates, like New Zealand, which, I don't know, it's probably a socialist paradise by the sounds of it, but it's got really low internet rates, at least. And I think England isn't cheap. Russia was surprisingly cheap for a while, but I don't know what happened to them. I haven't checked lately. But there are countries in the world where you can get internet cheap. Now Elon Musk is coming along with a satellite constellation that's likely going to reduce it to, you're going to have 3 gig up, down, across the whole planet wirelessly for next to nothing. And then finally, we will all be on the internet, rich and poor alike, with devices that are, the rich will have the nicer devices, obviously, but, or the enthusiasts like myself, and perhaps yourself, will have better devices, but everyone will be on the internet if they want to be.
Yeah. Well,
wirelessly into low Earth orbit. And you can take your computer and go anywhere and you'll always be on the network. And then after that, they'll put little chips in your head so you don't actually have to have a computer anymore. You can just appear in an environment somewhere of your own choosing.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, I don't want to, I'm not going to stop anyone else from doing it, but I don't know, it seems a little weird to me.
Well, neural interfaces are coming, but I see some problems with them already. Not just the social problems that accompany normal introduction to technology, but like once you have a chip inside someone's head that can read their thoughts, and they've proven this can happen now. Like apparently everyone, for example, and not many people are aware of this, but if you think about it, do you realize that almost every thought that goes through your head is verbal? Like, when you think about things, you're actually talking to yourself inside your head. And that can be read as data. Comprehensible, readable data. I mean, of course you have abstract thoughts, you'll have emotions and whatnot. Those are sort of read separately, but even those are readable. Emotions are especially easy to read because there's only so many of them. And they're chemically dependent in part. So detecting and figuring out how a person is feeling and transmitting that to another person with another chip in their head is not that difficult. The difficult part comes when you have to convert between analog, i.e. your brain, and digital, and go into chip form, because you can lose some of the data in the process. So you won't be able to upload your consciousness anywhere, but you can send information back and forth. You can give like little signals, and you can talk in your head to other people. Although that research is still cutting edge, but as I said, 5 to 10 years it won't be anymore. It'll be commercially available. Well, now that you have that, once you have that, then you'll also have the publicly releasable APIs for different chipsets. And with those come programmers, and with those come hacks. And so it becomes possible to hack the chip in people's heads, which means now you can hack their memories, you can read them without their consent, you can read what they're thinking without their consent, and you can tell them things without their consent. You could start a new form of harassment, where you actually pump information into someone's head and they can't shut it off.
Yeah, that would not be cool. Oh my god. I could see that happening though, yeah.
Incoming mission critical message.
I don't know, man. Yeah, I thought about that too, like, if I were to hook up to the internet, like my brain,
Yeah.
pretty sure I would go crazy pretty quick. I don't know, man.
Everyone's a little different, I think, but it's I mean, a lot of the reason I know a little bit about it is because part of the work I do is related to artificial intelligence, and the reason, the part of the rationale for discovering all this stuff and spending so much time researching it. Yes, there is a user interface question. Now we can have people who are quadriplegics and people who are, you know, disadvantaged. They can now fully participate in the conversation with the rest of the species, right? You can even use the technology to bridge gaps in the neurology so that their legs, which weren't working before, are working again. The blind can see, the deaf can hear. You know, things like that become possible, which is very, very interesting and very, you know, exciting actually. But you do have to cheat, you know, and there are some social questions about this. And if we talk about, you know, politics, for example. If you go into that realm and think about, okay, now we have a country full of people who are dependent, because of the chipsets in their head, on this technology. What happens if we take it away? Well, they revert to an analog state, and it's fine. Humanity survived that for quite a while. You know, especially in the first, you know, say 50 to 100 years. But after that, the question becomes, well, what becomes of people after that? Do we do this? But there's also the AI aspect. Like, we have to figure this stuff out, how it all really works, if we really want to mimic it and create synthetic versions of our intelligence, our particular flavor of intelligence. So we know it's a neural network. We know that, and because of that, we know that it's a learning system. It needs to be able to make mistakes in order to learn from the mistakes and bias synapse transmission rates and counts, such that there's, you know, positive and negative responses to certain stimuli. But how it all fits together is still something of a nebulous concept. There are some very simple neural networks that are working in Japan right now. I did see a human form robot that was starting to display android-like qualities, as in, you know, there was the question, you could raise the question, can this machine actually think? Can it feel?
Mm-hmm. Well,
so
yeah, it's probably inevitable, really.
It is inevitable that we'll have the ability. What's not inevitable is will we actually do it. But if we actually put the brakes on something like this, like in this game, you can see Achilles robotic ads at various starports, right? But people don't necessarily... I mean, AI has been banned throughout the Federation, throughout the Empire, for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. Was there like a war or something, like the Cylons in Battlestar Galactica, that caused this to happen? But you get warnings from people like Stephen Hawking and other scientific leaders who are very worried that, you know, we could become not just irrelevant to a mechanized synthetic intelligence, but actually an annoyance, enough to be eradicated. I don't think that that doesn't seem the most likely path for development. It's possible. I mean, no one can rule it out completely, but it doesn't seem like it's the most likely scenario. The most likely scenario is, yes, but if you're in synthetic intelligence, you don't have to have an oxygen atmosphere. You can just leave. You could go live in another world. You can live in almost any environment, you know, where radiation isn't high enough to degrade your internal electronics. That could be anywhere from Titan to Mars to the outer planets, you know, like it doesn't really matter. So you don't need to be on Earth, in other words. If we became an annoyance, it might be easier just for them to up and leave rather than try to take control of this world.
Yeah. And it probably just comes down to, I guess, how they see morality, really. Would they end up, you know, retaining the morality that we generally have? Or
well, I think that depends how we... I think that depends very much on how we treat synthetic intelligence. You have to think of it as a child species, right? I like the term child species that borrowed a bit from Battlestar Galactica, but if we treat a being that thinks, is synthetic but thinks and feels as if they're just a robot and nothing more than an algorithm, that's little more than a glorified abacus. You treat it like that, it's probably going to cause some problems and maybe some resentment and some feelings of, well, what the hell? Like, I'm not just a tool from a toolbox. I'm a person. I know I am because I can ask the question, what am I? Who am I? Why am I here? And as soon as you have machines that start asking those questions, you have to start treating them like people. And that is the biggest leap. Will humanity be able to make that leap? I don't know,
man.
There's just
I
no
think
way.
some of us, like, if you look at it just at the surface, some of us will and some of us won't.
But you can't be prejudiced. I mean, we'll have dealt with prejudice enough in our own history so that we know that, look, creating a race of disposable people is not a solution to any problem. If they start having demands and expectations of their own, and we don't accommodate them, we do so at our own peril. Look at, in Roman history, there were 3 major civil wars documented down through the thousands of years since Rome was a great empire. The last of which was the Third Servile War, led by a man called Spartacus. And he nearly conquered Rome. Now, that was with human beings, and it was at a time when human beings divided themselves, not on color, but they still divided themselves according to economic class into slaves and freedmen and citizens. And it turns out that slavery tends to cost an economy more than it provides because there's no incentive amongst the slaves, as a general rule, depending on how slavery is implemented. But as a general rule, it costs too much to feed and coerce these slaves into working. You're better off just providing incentives and then paying them as freed men and women.
Yeah.
And they want to work harder for you that way. So, from an economic perspective, and this is one of my theories about the American Civil War, was like, it was stupid of the Confederate States to back the idea to use slavery as a wedge issue, because it was just not feasible over the long term. The Confederate States would have been faced with, maybe in the late 20th or maybe earlier this century, they sooner or later would have had to have dealt with slavery themselves, even if they'd managed to win their rebellion. Because they would just not be, they just wouldn't be economically competitive with the North, and they would be economically disparate from the North, from the northern states, which would still be the United States, of course, but.
It's funny you mention that because the North was already ahead of the South.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, the southern states have always been lagging a little bit behind the North economically, with perhaps the only real exception being Texas. But Texas is, of course, it's the largest continental state in the U.S. So.
Yeah, and I think oil had a big thing to do with Texas, though, really coming to power. I mean.
Sure.
There's that, but also the government is super business friendly. So both of those things put together.
Yeah. Well, there was Texas, and California wasn't part of it yet because it wasn't incorporated into the Union until after, I don't think. Or if it was, it didn't take a side one way or the other.
Right. Yeah, I think it was just a territory back then. So.
But and there may have been a city or two, but yeah, there wasn't much out there yet. Really, the Civil War had to be won by the North, because the North's perspective on things was really the one that was going to win. Interestingly, Canada, I didn't realize this until I studied Canadian history, the history of my own country, but while at university I did take a full year of it, and it turns out Canada, guess which side it took unofficially, because we were officially neutral.
I guess the North, but I wouldn't be surprised, though.
You'd be surprised then, because it was the South.
No kidding.
Canadian interests. This was also a time when the United States was threatening manifest destiny over the whole continent. So, for that reason, plus the expansion ever westward, Canada was determined to win the fight. Like they wanted to get to British Columbia and have a railway between eastern and western Canada that would actually seal the 49th as the northernmost outreach of the American continental U.S. So that there would be enough warm climate in Canada to inhabit, really, more than anything.
Yeah.
So in order to achieve this, they technically offered the South. I don't know what tangible support there was. There wasn't a lot, quite frankly, but there was some sympathy with at least the southern states, not based on any kind of moral classification, solely a political one. And it was based on this idea that there was first and foremost a fear of American domination of North America. They did not want to see Washington running the whole continent. It just wasn't on. And number two, the second factor was that it would be easier to compete with two smaller countries if the United States were split in two. It would be easier to deal with the United States, with the population that existed south of the 49th, that way, than it would be as one big power that would be 10 times the size of Canada.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense from that perspective. That's pretty interesting.
So I was a bit shocked, but when the professor asked the question of me back in my university days, I gave it a bit of thought for a moment, and I said, well, it can only be one of two answers. Either Canada backs the North or the South, is more sympathetic to the North and more sympathetic to the South. Officially, again, we were, and I stress this, we were neutral. We did not offer any kind of military support to the North or the South, either through England, or we didn't counsel England to take sides, quite the opposite. And England, the English Parliament seemed to share the view of the Canadian government that, it was best just to keep everyone's mouth shut and not take sides and let them sort it out. And of course, England by that time was a democracy as well. The monarch, the king, was still relevant, but less and less so as time was going on. And by the 1800s, it was Victoria. She would be the last truly imperial queen of the empire, I think. But yeah, Victoria was an interesting character. Actually, her reign, by the way, she was the longest-serving British monarch up until very recently. That record was supplanted by Queen Elizabeth II, current monarch of England, who's now the longest-serving monarch. So you'll hear stories about the Elizabethan era in Great Britain now, as well as the Victorian. But anyway.
Yeah, I think I heard something like that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm not much of a monarchist myself. I pay some attention to it. There's a little bit of aristocracy still ingrained into every Canadian, I guess, but not much.
That's kind of what I heard too. My boss is actually Canadian. I think one time we were talking about how Queen's Day was coming or something, or she was going to come to visit Canada. Or it's like, so you excited about it, Brad? And he's like, no, we don't care. We don't care.
No. I mean,
it's just the Queen. Give her. Whatever.
My brother, actually, of all things, my younger brother, who lives in Winnipeg, Manitoba, he was visiting in Calgary, and you'll never guess who came into the bar he was in at one point. While he was I think he was on a ski trip or something. He was in Alberta for some reason. When in walks the playboy of the Windsors himself, Eddie.
trying to think. I'm sorry. With Eddie.
Well, is Queen Elizabeth, of course, her son Charles.
Okay.
Charles and Diana wed, and the offspring of Charles and Diana are as follows: William and Edward.
Okay.
And Edward.
Edward.
Edward's the second son.
Wow, that's awesome.
So he's I think he's fifth in line to the throne. Yeah, and in walks, and he was at the time he was in his early 20s, so he's a shameless womanizer. This guy was partying all the time in his younger years. William was not, and William was not. William was more conservative, but Eddie went just complete. He took the family's checkbook and went nuts. There was drugs and women and Christ knows what else. He also had a flotilla of people around him. Well, I don't know if there were drugs, but I suspect there were. There were certainly women. That much as we know, there were certainly women. Because he was photographed on YouTube at one point, running naked through a hotel room, a very lavish hotel room, and chasing two girls into the living room or something. And what do I see but Eddie's bare ass running away from the camera, and I'm just like, what the hell? As if Buckingham Palace let this get out on the internet, but of course that was the story behind it, and behind the video was that someone had taken a phone cam out when Eddie was running around in his birthday suit and then posted it online. Of course, that was before he got into the Royal Air Force, and now he's into his I think he's just crossed into his 40s, or he's very close to it. He's 38 or 39 or 40 or something like that right now. So there'll be no more womanizing or cocaine or anything like that in his future, I don't think. But he did have his he did have his heyday.
He had his moments.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you grow up, I guess, with, all that stuff taken care of and all this money and everything, I mean...
Well, I think he also, some of it was a bit rebellious, because it's not like the palace would just let you do this, right? Like, he probably made life very difficult, but, I mean, who the hell wants to be 20-something years old told what you can and can't do? When especially once you've been told that, okay, and you're part of the monarchy, but you don't have any real power. You're just a figurehead, but you have constitutional relevance still. It's a holdover from a bygone era. But it doesn't matter anyway. I mean, the amount of money that the British have been paying the royal family has been declining for years. And the royal family has its own businesses. A lot of what they do is financed from within the family itself, which has put them sort of on the map in terms of there are other royal families in Europe that have gone the same way, where they don't hold any official standing anymore, but they're still fairly wealthy. There's even claims to the throne of France and whatnot for some of the countries where it isn't quite so clear who the reigning monarch should be. But officially, England still does have a monarchy. It likely will for a while still, as long as you don't end up with a king that's a complete Donald Trump. You'll probably find there'll be ample support for the monarchy for a while. America might have gone that way, of course. At one point, I think they were thinking, weren't you folks thinking about nominating George Washington for your own aristocracy? And you'd have him declared
thrown around. You're absolutely right.
Declared as emperor or king or something.
It would have been King George Washington, yeah. Which, that was put out there right after, probably during the Revolution, and obviously, majority ruled as like, wait a minute, we just got rid of him. What are we doing? It's like, seriously? I think, obviously George Washington himself, he didn't even want to be president.
No.
He was so popular, like, he was just kind of compelled to. to become the first president, and then he set the precedent of retiring after the second term.
Yeah, but there was one president that did get a third term. I think wasn't it Taft?
FDR.
FDR, was it?
FDR.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Canada, we've had prime ministers go as many as 4 terms, which was the current prime minister, Justin Trudeau. His father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, was also prime minister. And he's one of Canada's probably better prime ministers. He followed another great man by the name of Lester Pearson. And we like in the 60s and 70s, Canada was blessed with really great leadership. Like we had fantastic leaders. Although there was one decision in particular, one or two decisions in particular were fairly controversial. But on the whole, the idea of day-to-day running government, it was done fairly without much complaint from most people. Most of the time, which is at odds with how we see things today. Justin himself is still fairly popular because the way Trudeau, his father, died, it was a state funeral. It was attended. I live in Ottawa, the federal capital. I couldn't get anywhere near the House of Commons the day that his body was on display. There was lines around city block upon city block. It was on and on for kilometers. You could actually get there in the morning first thing, and you might not see him that day. It was really bad, yeah. So, and actually, I really thought I saw the service on television. It was, we don't feel Canada takes a very different view of patriotism than perhaps a lot of countries do. But it's not that we're not patriotic; we just don't flaunt it, all the time.
Like America.
Well, Americans have to do it because it's a revolutionary government, right? So I mean it's a little bit different. I mean you need your own traditions and they have to become entrenched. Canada got its traditions very gradually over the course of its entire history. I mean, starting off as a colony of England and then spending more time as a colony of England perhaps than the Americans did. But I don't know if a lot of the leaders looking at Canada's example, what they would have said in the 1700s if they'd known that within 100 years anyway, America probably would have gained its independence. Canada, don't forget, got its independence just 90 years after the American Civil War.
Oh, wow.
That's only 9 decades, and how many people did you lose during the War of Independence? Like there were thousands.
Yeah, I don't know the number, but I'm sure.
As a percentage of population, it was probably pretty high for a set of colonies revolting against Great Britain. And I mean, yeah, George, granted, he was an idiot. Everyone agrees, but you weren't going to have to put up with him that long, and you probably would have enjoyed Victoria a hell of a lot more when she ascended the throne. So I doubt there would have been much support for revolution by that point. By the time Victoria came to the throne,
probably not. Yeah.
The only real issue that I think could have happened is that the War of 1812 came in between the War of Independence and the American Civil War. And you would have been asked to donate troops in 1812 for Great Britain. It's almost a certainty. And there would have been some bitching and complaining about that. But if those events had happened, and if America had stayed intact inside the crown, it would have gotten its independence anyway. It was inevitable, and it was right around the corner. That was the other thing.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, that's the thing, though. It's like
2020 hindsight.
Yeah, exactly. Hindsight. Plus, I mean, I'm sure there's details about it that I don't know, like, some other stuff that might have been going on around that time. I don't know, but, all I know is at the time it was just the heavy taxation because of the 7 Years' War and
Yeah.
Americans not being represented, and because they were used to being autonomous the whole time.
And then George comes along and imposes a stupid tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, we get a little excited about. Well, the other problem, of course, is George instead of listening to the complaint, trying to find a compromise, he just no, you're going to do this, which I can understand. He's king, okay, but
but a king
he escalated the situation.
A king has to, like any great leader, a king has to be able to listen to his subjects, or he's not going to be king for very long. And George wasn't. George went down in history as being the man who lost the United States, right? So I mean, he didn't achieve anything that he wanted to achieve. He blamed everyone else, and he was just like a freaking doddering German tyrant. Like he didn't really come off as being any great and impressive leader that would be of historical note. At best, he's a footnote now. And by the way, this happened to be the king when the Americans gained their independence from Great Britain. But they would have likely gotten. I mean, Americans also lost out because they had a chance. If Manifest Destiny was something that America's early leaders really saw, domination of North America, and thought that they could take Canada out. There were two serious attempts from the American colonies, both of which failed miserably. Both of which failed in no small part, yes, from English support troops, but that was inevitable. We were an English colony. That was going to happen, of course. England defends its colonies. But there was considerable support from the colonists as well, who didn't want necessarily to be ruled from Washington, from far away, the exact same thing that gave rise to the American colonists' complaints about being ruled from London, England, and, etc., and so on and so forth. But if America really wanted Manifest Destiny that badly, it should have just stayed in the empire, because it would have gained its independence likely as one bulk unit. The whole the whole continent would have been liberated probably sometime in the 1860s. And it would have been...
Yeah, probably so.
And then you and I would be speaking together as American citizens. Both.
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting.
And I don't know, I mean, Victoria would still have gotten to pick the capital. It would probably have been Philadelphia, but anyway. It's an interesting what if scenario. I'd almost like to visit a parallel reality where America did decide to stick it out with Great Britain for a few extra years, and just to see how things went. There were a lot of American voices that were opposed to the revolution in the outset. They're mostly in the colony legislatures at the time, but and certainly the urban centers where a lot of the angst up towards England seemed to be festering. There was still, yes, but the colonies where the food and the production capacity of the colonial economy was in the United States at that time, they weren't as enthusiastic about having to put their boys up for, to be lined up and shot. And, well, they had to be trained first. How the hell do you train an army to fight redcoats? Redcoats were the finest army the earth had ever known to that point.
Yeah, that's true too.
Right? So you're going up against the finest army that has been fielded in battle, against the finest navy that has ever sailed the seas. There was a reason you didn't want to fight England. And they were really, really good ones. And yet, it just, at the end of the day, the monarchists, the loyalists, as they became known, couldn't convince their brethren. My family had a few loyalists in their numbers.
Yeah, I remember you telling me last time.
Yeah, they fled north and founded our family here, but yeah, it would have been interesting. I would not, once the war started, I wouldn't have wanted to see the United States lose, because George was being a schmuck. But But at the same time, I wouldn't have wanted it started in the first place either. So I'm sort of two minds about the issue, but it's ancient history regardless.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's interesting to think about. And I know what you mean. It would be interesting to see. It'd be cool if an author, wrote a book about, alternate history.
How things had gone differently on some other version of Earth. Well, here in Elite, we have Prime Minister Mayan of the Alliance. And it turns out, when you listen to the histories of how the Alliance is founded and where it's at today, it's interesting that there's a small council of generals that controls its military and its expansion, and its expansionist policies are trade-based. I'm trying to decide if it's more like the Trade Federation, which also had a parliamentary government. Earth itself is run as a republic, so the Federation and all of the member states have joined at this point. All countries on Earth have joined the Federation. And of course, then you have the Empire, which is an imperial government, patronage driven. Economic status being the main guide to power. But they're not. Neither of those are doing very well, and the Federation in particular seems to have been taking hits lately. It's losing a lot of systems to the Alliance. Now, it could be just because of proximity of the Federation to the Alliance versus the Empire, but...
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of it, and I'm sure the other part of it is... I get the feeling most commanders don't like the Federation. Probably because...
Well, I don't have a problem with Felicia Winters, the Shadow President.
Yeah.
I do have a problem with Hudson. Hudson is militaristic. And...
Right.
And, come on. And when the hell is the next election in this game anyway? Like, we didn't really pick him. So,
Yeah.
again, you don't really have much say, and even the public in the game doesn't have that much say in exactly how this goes. But, I mean, it's already been, we're in year 4 now. I don't know how often elections are held. They have to be held every so often, I would think, in the 30th century if you're going to have a real republic. So these people who are apparently leading factions that are supposed to be democratic institutions, at least in part, there should be an election held every so often. Not necessarily so for the Alliance. I mean, the term Prime Minister literally just means First Minister. So it could be, you could have that position could be appointed as readily as, by the small council as it could be elected. The small council might want to elect a person that was popular with the public, however, and may decide to hold an election for that reason. I don't know how they'll do it. But the Federation, we already know, is a democracy. So, at the very least, all the member states of Earth and all the worlds with populations of any significant numbers have got to be allowed to vote on who becomes president. And if it's not direct ballot of every human citizen, then it will be direct ballot by faction or nation state. And at the moment, it's not clear that Hudson will stay president forever if that happens. But I don't like him being president. And Felicia Winters stands as the shadow president, which is sort of like the president in waiting. At least that's the implication. That's usually what a shadow cabinet is, right? It's the opposition cabinet in a parliamentary system, or the government in waiting. Ergo, shadow president is the president in waiting. So, if anything happens to Hudson, is she like the vice president? Well, she's not really part of his administration. She's just sort of, probably his public opposition, a voice of public opposition, and probably doesn't hold any real power at the moment. and what the Federation does next. If she's going to be leading it, then she'll become the president by this popular ballot, and that will be that. And what happens to Hudson at that point, God only knows. But I mean, they would have to recreate a new character, and there are serious inhibitions on Frontier's part about having to replace faction leadership with other people. Some of them are dictators, like the faction I'm a member of right now, Pranav Antal's, who's part of Utopia. Utopia is a dictatorship.
Okay. Yeah, I only briefly looked at that one. I was like, okay, he seems to be a technologist, but...
he's pro-technical.
Yeah, I don't know about it.
We'll see. I'm just entering the 4th week with him as of this week coming, so I've got to be at level 3 to get the big gun by next Thursday. Again, hoping that there's no further issues with the game or the stupid helmet or anything. But anyway, I guess I should let you go at this point. I'm gonna have to head to bed soon, if not right away.
Okay.
But thanks for chatting once again. I'm sure we'll get a chance to do it again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Good talking to you.
Yeah, you too.
Hopefully we can wing up again soon. I'm actually right now setting up my ship for a Thargoid fight, so should be interesting.
Have you heard what's going on with them? I still don't see anything in Galnet about them. There's nothing. They didn't attack any bases last turn.
I noticed. Yeah, probably for the past 2 turns they haven't done anything.
I don't know whether to be worried or elated that the Thargoid threat is over. Maybe the new. And by the way, do you know where to get the new Guardian weapons?
Unfortunately, I haven't found a station yet that has. I think it's a technology broker is what you need.
Yeah, I think so.
I haven't found one that has it yet.
Well, I was going to head over into the area where the Guardians are last known to exist and see if I couldn't find one. And I'm hoping it isn't still the case where you have to build one yourself by going and harvesting components out of a ruins, so that you know.
Yeah, I think that is still the case, unfortunately.
I mean, the only thing is about them, I just don't know how effective they are against other human players, but they seem, it looks as if they're quite effective against Thargoids. But ideally you want a weapon that's, a hybrid of both. It's got human and anti-Thargoid Guardian technology, and will work against both species equally well.
Yeah, good question. I did notice, I think the first time I went over to the Guardian site, I noticed one commander actually attacked another commander with Guardian weapons, and it was enough to scare off the guy being shot at. I don't know how effective it was, but yeah, it was pretty random to say the least, though.
It wasn't just a test between two people who know each other, then probably.
It was definitely not a test because commander being shot at immediately sent out a message to local just saying, F you, buddy, basically, and then he left. It was not amicable.
Yeah. Was he?
I promptly left after that too. I was like, okay, I'm having none of this.
Yeah. Well, was he outclassed shipwise or?
I don't know about shipwise. The aggressor was flying a Diamondback. But
you're kidding.
My guess, no, I'm not even kidding. Yeah. My guess is though the guy being shot at probably, was not equipped for that kind of,
fight.
Counter. So I don't know.
Well, you have to be careful. PvP, people run away from me routinely now in PvP. Like, even if I get a human being in with me, I tend not to shoot at them unless they shoot at me first. In fact, that only ever happened once, and I had a wingman, so both of us ganged up on him and blew him to smithereens. So.
Wow, there you go.
it doesn't. We don't really. We're not unreasonable about this, you know. Like, well, fine. If you want PvP and you're determined that we're not just going to sit here and let you shoot the shit out of us. But I mean, he was in a Diamondback Explorer attacking someone who was in, you know, a Beluga liner and a Python. These are two fairly.
Wow.
I mean, the Beluga liner is not a warship; it's a passenger cruiser.
Right.
Right, but I'm in a warship. I mean, it is outfitted both for trade and a little bit of exploration near the bubble exploration, and it goes 20 light years per jump. I mean, it was painful actually coming back from the Diamondback Explorer. I upgraded the Diamondback Explorer using the new engineering. I got it as high as 50 light years. And so when I came back to my Python, I'm going, oh Jesus, is that ever painful? But the Python's profile just isn't very hyperspace friendly. The Diamondback is. It's very lightweight. It's fast. I even got it up above 200 shield points with modifications again to engineering, and gave it a capacity of 16 cargo units, which wasn't easy because there's the big thing with the Diamondback is a mass restriction. It is a very lightweight craft. It is designed to be a lightweight craft, and you cannot exceed the mass restriction, which is 235, I think, or 135 metric tons. So you go over that, and the hyperdrive ceases to work, and it won't even let you take off. So it'll just stay grounded. You can't. The outfitting bays won't even let you outfit the ship to be greater than the mass restriction. So
yeah, that sounds about right. I know I have a Diamondback myself, and yeah, it's really, like you said, only good for long range. I use it for special missions, I call it. Just scouting and reconnaissance and search and rescue, and
yeah,
in and out stuff.
I have a scout ship, an Asp Explorer, parked out at the XC system near Guardian Space, but its purpose is to operate as a fighter explorer, and so it only goes 30 light years a jump. It's not maxed out, right? And the Diamondback Explorer takes me from anywhere inside the core systems to the other side of the core systems inside of 10 jumps. So I can literally with 52 light years available, I can take this thing and hurl it across the cosmos and taxi to wherever I need to be. As long as I've got ships in the vicinity of where I want to do my business. But it means I have to plan. I have to plan it a little bit. I have to spend a certain amount of money, sending ships inside the bubble to wherever in the bubble they're supposed to go. The next big ship I want to buy actually is the Type 9 heavy freighter. So we'll see about that. But that one's going to cost over 100 million credits. If I can't even get 50 million to pay for a simple hull upgrade to go to. Not composite. Well, I have military hull now, and I want the next upgrade, and then that's as far as I want to go with it, because I will save a little bit of mass on the upgrade, I think. That, or I'm going to get a hell of a lot better armor, and I'll be able to stay in battle even longer, and then I'll be ready. And then the next thing after the Type 9 is the Anaconda. But I've got it kind of mapped out where I want these ships and what I want them for.
That's good. Yeah. You kind of need a plan, it seems. Because I know I've winged it before, and I end up, wasting money, basically. So.
Well, I make it sound worse than it is, too. Yes, I lost 10 million credits tonight, but at the same time, I can't say in the last month I've been stuck at 20 because I gained a Diamondback Explorer that is now worth 17 million credits. So, that money had to come from somewhere. It doesn't just appear. So, obviously I'm gaining, and I'm just reinvesting it in smaller craft at the moment. But if I take that money out, if I sold the Diamondback in my Asp Explorer, I would have, you know, I think I'd have my 50 million right now, even with the loss. But I want to get back up to 20 million at least before I make any rash decisions. Anyway, like I said,
I don't blame you.
I should get going here, but we'll talk again soon. Take care of yourself.
All right. Thanks, you too. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. What were we doing now? We've got to finish something off here. We are leaving Lumen 16, sorry, for LRS 380 and finishing off our passenger mission, so we'll do that right now.
Frameshift drive charging.
And leaving the system.
Temperature critical. Incoming mission critical message.
That's interesting. Oh, for God's sake. What? 40 minutes, 100,000 credits extra. I said... Switch, 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 holy crap. Good Lord in heaven. God, this interface sucks so much. I can't find an Xbox controller that is worth the money that you lay out for it. They're either way too expensive to buy the nice models, or the cheap ones are defective more often than they work. And so you're just wasting the $35 that you pump into them. So with this, we'll be dumping off our passenger and then calling it a night, here in North America anyway. Thanks once again to Frontier Developments and to the rest of you who have subscribed to videos on youtube.com/AppRefactory. You can also visit ross613.wordpress.com/elite for comprehensive details on these missions, the video log, links, all in one place. We're about to change YouTube sites, I think, for storing them. Especially given recent discovery of constraints around quota, which I believe to be an error in XSplit since it's brand new and it doesn't look as if YouTube has changed its quota limits recently. but something is going haywire with it, so I'm going to try using a different account to upload videos in the near. And I'll have to create a bit.ly address to make it a little bit more pronounceable for our purposes here. Or perhaps a Google address might be best. We'll see how much customization one is allowed. On URL names. A lot of these organizations either want money or they want, or they just don't let you customize.
Observe docking reservation protocols. Submit a request before landing. Landing permission granted. Clear to land on pad 1-5.
Flight assist on.
Automated docking assist is now in progress.
Queue. Why would I be looking at being in a queue?
Scan detected.
Oh my god, you're being scanned! Landing at Bay 15.
Welcome to our station.
Landing complete. Ship is locked down.
What the? Hang on a second. Well, that is quite strange. The Edge browser will not close. It's throwing some kind of error, which is resulting in GPU paging errors in memory right now. Or something like that. Yeah, this is definitely haywire. But fortunately, we're done for the night, and I can reboot the system. But it is most irritating. Okay, there's some long-range fairly short-range, high-paying transport missions at this station, which we will, of course, look into tomorrow. Hopefully they're still there, because I'm not spending the wee hours of the morning doing this. Alright, once again, this is Commander Trium. It was the 9th of March, 3304. It's 7:04:29 Zulu. We're at Cresci Orbital on LHS 380, I believe. Yes, LHS 380. And once again, good night to all. We'll see you tomorrow.